explanation of selection 2. All statements of truth are but partial statements. There are two sides to every argument. Any bit of truth is but a half-truth. Hunt diligently enough, and you will find the opposite half. Everything is, and it isn't. Any full statement of truth must of necessity be paradoxical. This is because our finite point of view enables us to see but one side of the subject at any given time. From the point of view of the infinite, all sides are seen at the same time. All points of a globe being visible to the infinite seer, who is also able to see through the globe as well as around it. Now, the above-mentioned precepts are illustrations of the law of paradox. They are generally dismissed as non-understandable by the average person who reads them, and yet they are quite reasonable and absolutely true. So let's consider them. The key to understanding these and all truths lies in the ability to distinguish between the relative or lower point of view and the absolute or higher one. Remember this well, for it will help you see through many difficult statements. We are told, destroy ambition. Now, the average man recoils from that statement because we've been hypnotized into thinking that ambition is the be-all and end-all. He cries out that such a course would render a man spiritless and worthless. Ambition seems to be at the bottom of all man's accomplishments. Then, as he throws away the very idea of destroying ambition, he sees in the fourth precept, work as those who are ambitious. And unless he sees with the eyes of the spiritual mind, he becomes more confused than ever. But the two things are indeed possible. They are absolutely feasible. The ambition alluded to is that emotion which urges a man to attain from vain, glorious, selfish motives, and which impels him to crush all in his path and to drive to the wall all with whom he comes in contact. Such ambition is but the counterfeit of real ambition, as abnormal as is the morbid appetites which counterfeits and assumes the guise of hunger and thirst. The ridiculous customs of decorating the person with barbarous ornamentations, which counterfeits the natural instinct of putting on some slight covering as protection from the weather. The absurd custom of burdening oneself and others with the maintenance of palatial mansions, which counterfeits man's natural desire for a home spot and shelter. The licentious and erotic sexual instincts of many men and women, which are but counterfeits of the natural sexual instincts of normal men and women. The ambitious man becomes insane for success because the instinct has become perverted and abnormal. He imagines that the things for which he is striving will bring him happiness, but he is disappointed because they are not the source of permanent happiness. He ties himself to the things he creates and becomes their slave rather than their master. He regards money not as a means of securing necessities and nourishment, mental and physical, for himself and others, but as a thing valuable of itself. He has the spirit of the miser. Or he may seek power for selfish reasons, to gratify his vanity, to show the world that he is mightier than his fellow man, to stand above the crowd. All poor, petty, and childish ambitions, unworthy of a real person. All must be outgrown before he may progress, but perhaps the very lesson he is receiving is just the one needed for his awakening. In short, the man of the abnormal ambition works for things for the sake of selfish reward and is inevitably disappointed, for he's pinning his life on things which will fail him in the hour of need. He's leaning, in essence, on a broken fence. Now let's examine the other side. The fourth precept contains these words: work as those who are ambitious. One who works this way may appear to the world as the typically ambitious man, but the resemblance is merely outward. The ambitious man is the abnormal thing, the man who works for work's sake, in obedience to the desire to work, the craving to create, giving full expression to the creative part of his nature. This is the real thing. And he's able to do better work, more lasting work than the first mentioned man. He gains happiness from his work. He feels the joy which comes from doing. He lets the creative impulse of the life force flow through him, and he does great things. He accomplishes and is happy in his work and through his work. So long as he keeps true to his ideals, he will be safe and secure in that joy and will be doing well his share of the world's work. But as he mounts the ladder of success, he is subjected to the terrible temptations and often allows the abnormal ambition to take possession of him. The result being then, in his next incarnation, he will have to learn his lesson all over again until he has mastered it. Every man has his work in the world to do, and he can do it the best way he knows how. He can do it cheerfully and intelligently, and he should let have full expression that instinct which impels him to do things right, better than they've been done before, not so much that he might triumph over others, but because the world needs things done better. Truth does not teach that man should sit around doing nothing but meditating with his gaze fastened upon his umbilicus. On the contrary, it teaches that it's man's duty and glorious privilege to participate in the world's work, and that he, who is able to do something a little better than it has been done before, is blessed and a benefactor to the race. It recognizes the divine urge to create, which is found in all men and women, and believes in giving it the fullest expression. It teaches that no life is fully rounded out and complete unless some useful work is a part of it. It believes that intelligent work helps towards spiritual unfoldment and is in fact necessary to it. It does not teach the beauty in such work, but it does teach that in the humblest task may be found interest to the one who looks for it, and that such a one always finds a better way of doing the thing, thus adding something to the world's store of knowledge. It teaches the real ambition that love of work for work's sake, which we call agape, rather than that work which is performed for the world's counterfeit rewards. Therefore, when the precept says, destroy ambition, work as those who are ambitious, you will understand it. Read over these words again and again until you fully grasp their meaning, until you feel them as well as see them. The gist of this teaching may be summed up by saying, destroy relative ambition, which causes you to tie yourself to the objects and rewards of your work, which yields nothing but disappointment and repressed growth. But develop and express fully the absolute ambition, which causes you to work for work's sake, for the joy which comes to the worker from the desire to express, the divine instinct to create, which causes you to do the thing you have to do the best you know, better than it has been done before. This enables you to work in harmony and unison with the divine work, which is constantly going on, instead of in discord. Let the divine energy work through you and express itself fully in your work. Open yourself to it, and you will taste the joy of life. Destroy life, says the second precept, destroy desire of life. And the fourth precept answers back, respect life as those who desire it. This is another truth expressed as paradox. One must eradicate from the mind the idea that physical life is everything. Such an idea prevents one from recognizing the fuller life of the soul and makes this particular life in the body the whole thing, instead of merely a grain of sand on the shores of the everlasting sea. One must grow to feel that he will always be alive, whether he is in a body or out of a body. This particular life is merely a thing to be used by the real self, which cannot die. Therefore, destroy that desire of life which causes you to fear death and which makes you attach undue importance to the mere bodily experience, to the impairment of the broader life and your consciousness. Pluck from your mind that idea that when the body dies, you die. You live on as much alive as you are at this moment, possibly even more alive. See the physical life for what it is and not be deceived. Seek to look upon death not with horror, whether it may come to you or to some other loved one. Death is just as natural as life at this stage of development, and as much to be happy about. It's hard to get rid of the old horror of physical dissolution, and one has many battles before he's able to cast off the worn-out delusion which has clung to the race in spite of its constantly sounded belief in future life. The Church teaches of the life beyond, to which all the faithful should look forward, but the same faithful shiver and shudder at the thought of death, and clothe themselves in black when the friend dies, instead of strewing flowers around and rejoicing that the friend is in a better land. One must grow into a positive feeling or consciousness of life everlasting before he is able to cast off this old fear, and no creed or expressed belief will serve the purpose until the state of consciousness is reached. To the one who feels in his consciousness this fact of the survival of individuality and the continuance of life beyond the grave, death loses its terror, and the grave its horror, and the desire of life, relative, is indeed destroyed because the knowledge of life, absolute, has taken its place. We must not forget the reverse side of the precept, respect life as those who desire it. This does not mean alone the life of others, but has reference to your own physical life as well. For in your letting go of the old idea of the relative importance of the life in the body, you must avoid going to the other extreme of neglect of the physical body. The body is yours in pursuance of the divine design, and it is in fact the temple of the Spirit. If it were not good for you to have a body, rest assured you would not have it. It is indeed needed by you in this stage of your development, and you would be unable to do your work of spiritual unfoldment without it. Therefore, do not be led into the folly of despising the body or physical life as something unworthy of you. They are the most worthy of you at this stage, and you may make great things possible through them. To despise them is like refusing to use the ladder, which will enable you to reach great heights. Respect the body as do those who think that the body is the self. The body should be recognized as the instrument of the soul and should be kept clean, healthy, and strong as may be.
Every means should be used to prolong the life in the body which has been given you. It should be respected and well used. Do not sit and pine over your confinement in this life. You are living out certain experiences. Make the best of it. Live out each moment of your life in a normal, healthy, clean way, always knowing it for what it is and worrying not about the past or future. You are in eternity, now as much as you will ever be. So why not make the most of it? It is always now.
The desire referred to in the precept is the relative desire, which springs from the mistaken idea that the physical life is the only life. The absolute desire of life arises from the knowledge of what the whole life of man is and what this brief physical life is. And therefore, while the advanced man does not desire it in the old way, he does not despise it and really desires it because it forms a part of his whole life. And he does not wish to miss or part with any of it at all. The advanced man neither fears death nor seeks it. Such a man or woman is invincible. When the consciousness is once reached, the person is filled with such power that its radiance is felt by the world in which he or she moves. Fear neither death nor life, neither fear death nor seek it. When you have attained this stage, then you will know what life is, what death is, for both are manifestations of the greater life to which you belong. Destroy desire of comfort. At this first glance, this would seem to advocate extreme asceticism. Extreme asceticism is really a running away from things that we may think are too pleasant. There seems to be an idea in the minds of many people of all shades of religious belief that because a thing produces pleasure, it must necessarily be bad. There seems to be a current belief that God takes pleasure in seeing people unhappy and doing unpleasant things, and accordingly, many so-called religious people have frowned upon the normal pleasures of life and have acted as if a smile were offensive. This is all a mistake. All normal pleasures are given to man to use, but none of them must be allowed to use man. Man must always be the master and not the slave in his relation to the pleasures of life. One should not allow himself to be tied to the pleasures and comforts of life to such an extent that he will cease to advance and develop his higher nature. Man may be ruined by too much luxury, and many cases are known where the higher influences at work under the law took away from a man those things hindering his growth, and hindering placed him in a position in which he was forced to live normally and thereby grow and unfold. When a man has too many things, he is apt to let things own him instead of him owning the things. He becomes a slave rather than a master. Destroy desire of comfort does not mean that one should sleep on rough boards as a special virtue or that one should eat dry crust. Neither of these things will have any effect. This precept does impress upon us that we should not imagine that true happiness can arise from any such cause. Enjoy the normal and rational pleasures of life, but always retain your mastery over them and never allow them to run away with you. Always remember that true happiness comes from within, and that these luxuries and comforts are not necessities of the real self, and are merely things to be used for what they are worth. As one advances spiritually, one's tastes are apt to become simpler. He may well like well-made things of good quality best suited for their purpose, but he does not want so many of them, and ostentation and display become very foreign to his tastes. They are very apt to leave him of themselves, finding his mental quarters not suited to their accommodation. Now, the fourth precept instructs you to be happy as those who live for happiness. This does away with the long-faced and dreary atmosphere idea. It says, be happy, not make believe you're happy. As happy as those who live for so-called happiness coming from the things of the physical plane. That's the same teaching. Be happy. So live that you may obtain a healthy, normal happiness out of every hour of your life. The advanced man or woman is not a miserable, sour-visaged or gloomy person. His life and understanding lifts him from the worries and fears of the race, and his knowledge of his destiny is most inspiring. He is able to rise above the storm and riding safely on the crest of this wave, yielding to every motion of the swell, he escapes being submerged. When things become too unpleasant to be borne on the relative plane, he simply rises into the higher regions of his mind where all is serene and calm. And he gains a peace that will abide with him when he again sinks to meet the trials and burdens of the day. The advanced man is the happiest of men, for he has ceased to fear. He knows that there's nothing to be afraid of. And he has outgrown many superstitions of the race which keep many people in torment. He has left hate and malice behind him and has allowed love to take their vacant places. And he must necessarily be happier by reason of the change. He's outgrown the idea of an angry God laying traps in which he to enmesh him. He's long since learned to smile at the childish tale of the devil with cloven hoofs and horns, breathing fire and brimstone and keeping a bottomless pit into which one may be plunged, if he should ever happen to smile at God's beautiful earth some fine Sunday morning, instead of drowsing away an hour listening to some long, drawn-out theological sermon. He has learned that he is a child of God, destined for great things, and that God is as a loving father, yes, and mother, rather than as a cruel taskmaster. He realized that he has arrived at the age of maturity and that his destiny rests, to some extent, upon himself. The advanced person is necessarily an optimist. He sees that all things are working together for good, that life is on the path of attainment, and that life is over, above, and in all. These things you learn as you progress, and you are happy, happier than those who live for happiness.